Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on the role of government is the Honorable Judge Vincent Pirrone. Please join the conversation by calling 332-263-3300. That's 332-263-3300. And now, Mr. Davis and Judge Pirrone.
Hello again. It's Wednesday, 6:30, and I'm delighted to be back with you. I'm especially delighted to have as a guest tonight Vincent Pirrone. Judge Pirrone has started a political career. At one time, he ran against Al D'Amato for the town supervisor of Nassau County, or was that Vinny? Was that Nassau County or at
Well, actually, D'Amato was the head of the ticket. I ran against Bennett. They were the team at that particular time. He was a supervisor, the presiding supervisor of the county of Nassau. That's right, Morty.
Yeah, so Vince must be becoming president of the United States by a few votes, but he's better than any president we've ever had. I love him. And he's given me plenty of aggravation over the years because he's a great tennis player. Until he hurt his what was not the ankles, what'd you hurt?
The trapezius and the Achilles.
The Achilles. Till he got the Achilles accident. Up to then, he used to abuse me regularly. But notwithstanding that, he's brilliant, and I love to listen to him. And he generally is right of a little right of me, or a lot right of me. So he should be an interesting guest in this discussion, because I start off believing that the United States, being the wealthiest country in the world, should provide for its citizens a lifestyle that matches any of the other advanced countries in the world. And there's a list that comes out every year, prepared by some division of the United Nations, I believe, or some intergovernmental agency that lists numerically the number of countries that are the happiest, the most content, and so forth. When I looked at it the first time, I thought for sure the United States would be up there, number one, number two, number five. In fact, the happiest countries are all out of Scandinavia, or related thereto. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, wealth in terms of accessibility to all the good things in life, the best restaurants, the best shops, everything that human beings could possibly want. Even the average person who's on welfare today lives better than any king in the history of the human race up to 200 years ago. On welfare today lives better than any king in the history of the human race up to 200 years ago. That's what I said. How come it's telling me back what I said? Anyway, they have more choice when they go to the supermarket of meats, of fish, of vegetables, of every kind of food that you could possibly think of in the average supermarket. The king used to have, they didn't even have refrigeration, so they had an animal that was killed fresh, but they couldn't store it effectively. They made a party when ship came from the Far East and brought different kind of herbs or what is it called? What was the word? Oh, any kind of Paul Copperell's on. We already have a caller. Paul Copperell, one of my classmates at Harvard Business School. He's a blooming genius. Paul, say hello to Vinny Pirrone, one of my good friends.
Hello, Vinny. How do you do? And Mort,
Paul, nice talking to you.
it's my pleasure, privilege as well. And I tell you, Mort is the greatest comic who ever walked the face of the earth because he says that I'm smart, and he's really mistaken. But in any event, let's give it a try, right?
Well, I'll tell you something. If you're in high opinion in Morty's book, that's good enough for me because my regard for Mr. Davis, Morty Davis, who I'm privileged to call friend over these many, many years, and I've had the good opportunity in life to meet many people. As he said, I had somewhat of a political career and my career on the bench. Morty is something that's been a bright light in my life, and I'm sure in the life of many others.
Well, I'm so glad that he and I have reconnected. God, how many years ago was 1959 when we last saw each other in class? It's a long time ago.
Well, it's nice to
I'm the fortunate one.
What was that? I missed that. What was that?
I'm the fortunate one.
Ah.
That you and I have reconnected, Morty.
Yeah. You got it backwards. You're looking in the mirror. I'm the fortunate one. Anyway, it's great to have each of you and both of you. You're both very special, and you added immensely to the joy I've experienced in my life, and you've added to my knowledge and wisdom. So you're both great. I can't say anything in terms of adjectives that would pay tribute to what you've each meant to me in my life. But I want to discuss how we make the world a better place, not how you serve my needs better. So let's get on with it and see what we can come up with.
Let's do.
So what's the optimum? Go ahead. What's the optimum role that government can play? In other words, since the beginning of time, since the beginning of civilization, we've tried to evolve as a people, as human beings. The best method of running the world, running a country, interacting with each other, that would produce the best life for the maximum number of people, and the minimum of aggravation and hostility between us, and war and killings and so forth. And notwithstanding all the progress we've made intellectually, if you look at the number of killings we have every day in this country, we've had 600 mass slaughters already this year, almost 2 a day. Mass slaughters being where at least 4 people were shot, not necessarily killed, but shot. In most cases, at least 2 were killed. And many that were much larger number of people that were killed in churches, in leisure destinations, in synagogues, in nightclubs, in gay gatherings, and every kind of milieu. We've had multiple killings. One fellow was shooting an assault weapon out of his window at a hotel in Las Vegas and killed, I think, 57 people and maimed and crippled many more. So how do we change that approach and show more love for each other and more caring about each other and eliminate the negatives that still prevail? In other words, child poverty, which should not exist. We have so much abundant food and assets to provide for literally for the whole world. At one point, economics was described as the science, the dismal science, because as Malthus, back in the Middle Ages, described it, he said the population of the world is growing geometrically, but the ability to add food products and farm products increased arithmetically. So in due course, we're going to have an immense starvation and the worse. And to some extent, we've had a lot of damage through global warming, through what happens to the land where we can't even grow anything, drought and fires and so forth. Notwithstanding that, we produce more farm products than we ever did. At one point, the number of people employed on farms in the United States was close to 95%. And we just about produced enough for everybody to have a minimal diet. Today, we have about 5% of the population working on farms or working farms, and we take care of not only every citizen of the United States, every inhabitant of the United States, but people throughout the world. So it's not as dismal as we once envisioned, although it still has some implications of misery and dismalness, because we've gone from, I think, when I was born, or just before I was born, in the early 1900s, I think the world's population was a little over 1 billion or 2 billion at most. It's now 7.5 billion, and it keeps growing. And obviously, we can't grow food supply forever to meet when we reach 15 billion or 25 billion or whatever number. So, but within the framework of what's available to us from this precious earth, and it is precious, and we're blessed that God created this earth that provides for us everything that we need, literally. And we should be praising, blessing, counting our blessings every single day that we're alive. And instead of feeling that, as some people do, that they're overtaxed because we raise taxes from time to time, and we take away the income that people earn legitimately, and they rightfully, it seems rightfully, say, why are they taking the money? I'm the maker, I'm the doer. Why are they taking it from me and giving it to the taker? Let them go out and get work and produce, and he'd have it themselves. So people like Warren Buffett say it's unfair. I should be paying more taxes because I pay a lower tax rate than my secretary. So he's one of the unusual ones that says the rich should be taxed at a higher rate. Then there's the other extreme, Grover Norquist, if you ever heard of him. He's the founder of Americans for Tax Reform, and he thinks that there should be zero tax, that every congressman and senator, and he asks them to sign on against any tax increases. He says the government should be shrunk to the point where it could be drowned in the bathtub. That's how much respect he has for the use of government. So how do we make this a better world? How do we show that we care for each other? Why don't we behave as if the whole world was part of an extended family? We're all on the same ship, and if one part of the ship goes down, if one part of the ship suffers, we're all likely to suffer. How do we get to the point where the United States is number one or right up there, and we can all say, we're deriving all the benefits that our precious earth can give us. So I want you two geniuses to help me out and see if you can come up with some answers, or why aren't we there already? So Judge Pirrone, let's hear if you have any views, and Mr. Copperell, I know you have brilliant views because you were in my section at Harvard Business School, and I had the joy and privilege of listening to your insights and wisdom. So let's hear if you're still up to that level of treasured wisdom, and you can offer it to our podcast listeners.
Well,
Okay.
okay. I guess, am I first? Whatever, Morty, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and of course, hear your words of wisdom. I think that, of course, that's a big question. It's a big problem. Government is good, but too much of a good thing could be a problem. I think in certain areas, government has overreached. I think our greatest growth in this country has come at the time when there was less government. At the time when there's more government, I think we're declining, although we're the greatest country in the world, and I'm privileged and proud to be part of it. I think that the overreaching of government, and what is the problem? What causes the problem? Special interest. Who runs government? I mean, I was reading the statistics and the amount of money raised by those who seek public office and who gain public office. And naturally, human nature has to have certain obligations. And what has that caused to the role of the governing in exercising and rewarding those who supported their candidacy. So I think first we have to start with, to improve our government or to keep it running or to keep it the best government, is to limit the role and limit the amount of monies that go into it. Maybe we should move towards public support of candidates, because certainly only very few can come forward. I can't believe that there aren't many in this country who are probably far more gifted and could rule as well, or if not better, without the special interests controlling. So that's a problem. And I think government sometimes could be overreaching. The greatest growth in this country came when there was less government. Now we seem to be declining. So I think these are some of the issues that we should address.
Vinny, could you give me some example, or one example or several, where government overreach is a burden and causes the problems that you're
Sure.
referring to?
Well, my concern was certainly, I guess, probably being part of the judiciary and probably having a legal career over the years. Bail reform. There's an example of overreaching. They should leave that to those who are in law enforcement. Of course, there's problems with law enforcement. And of course, there are some difficulties in members of law enforcement who've exceeded their authority and exceeded their role. However, when they reduce the role, we are suffering now from the greatest crime wave that's ever existed. And they can talk about statistics lowering, etc. But I lived and I've been part of New York, and I was proud to be in New York City 4 or 5 nights a week and feel safe. I don't feel safe in New York City anymore. Okay, the press might be just concentrating on that, but New York is not safe. And why isn't it safe? That's the role of government. That's one of the roles of government, is to provide security. That's for which we pay taxes, rightfully so. We should be paying taxes. But you can't diminish law enforcement. You can't exceed that which the government is trying to do in connection with allowing less punishment, less enforcement. So I feel that we've failed in this regard, and I feel the failure in this regard is a failure of government. and as much and as well. I agree, Morty, that we should, and those who can pay taxes or pay more. However, I do not subscribe to the fact of these giveaway programs. And it's nice to be in government to give away money. But whose money are they giving away? It's the people, the hardworking people who made this country what it is. And therefore, to sacrifice that and their savings and their income to support programs that are failing needs a readjustment and reexamination.
Yes, so you feel that the government is too intrusive in the way they tax the successful people?
Well, I'm not intrusive in taxing, but I feel that the government has failed in its role to secure and the safety of the people. I feel that the programs and progressive, if you will, of course, the progressive wing of those in government have sought and have accomplished in certain degrees of bringing about a feeling of insecurity amongst many people, and many people quiet about it because the press doesn't support and doesn't give the right of all. I don't think we can, I don't believe, really say that the press doesn't have a view. It's not free press, quote. However, the press is definitely slanted towards the progressive liberal end. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying it's not a good thing in the sense that it's not fair to have a complete and total view and to support programs that I think are failing and will continue to fail and will diminish the role in this country and as a great country that it is, always has been, and unfortunately is being diminished.
Vinny, I certainly agree with you that government is far from perfect. But remember, the major role of protecting us through police and through the military that we fund is run by government and does a fairly decent job. It's true that there are neighborhoods that suffer from too much crimes, overdose of drugs and so forth. But overall, the government spends an enormous amount of its income, as it should, protecting our citizens. Unfortunately, we have something like the NRA, which I'm sure, given your views, you think may be appropriate, the Second Amendment, that the right to bear arms has become the right to have massive slaughter because we allow the gun companies, manufacturers, distributors, retailers to sell weapons of assault weapons that were made primarily and overwhelmingly for the military to kill as many of the enemy, so-called enemy, as quickly as possible. There's no reason why civilians, why anybody should ever have an assault weapon in our society. And so what does the NRA do and what does Congress do? They say, well, we just passed some gun control. What was the gun control they passed? And that was with great difficulty, to have more thorough background checks and also to deal with the mental illness. That is the biggest joke because every other advanced country in the world has at least as many mental illness problems as we do, and not one of them, not Australia, not England, not New Zealand, each of which has had an episode like we have of assault weapon, of massive killings, and immediately changed their laws, and they don't have it anymore. The last one that Australia had was in 1995, and they changed all the laws. They took in all the assault weapons. They made you go through a check that you go through. It takes at least a year, and you go through the police department. So you have a right to have a gun. But even our Constitution, presumably, the Constitution doesn't spend time, just as the Bible supposedly doesn't have extra words for no reason. And what our Constitution says, if I quote it correctly, is it says a well-armed militia entitles every man to possess a military I don't know it's described as a gun, as a arms, yeah, the right to bear arms. So it's outrageous that we, as I mentioned earlier, 600 mass shootings so far this year. That's almost 2 a day, and we refuse to in 1994. Under Biden, they passed a law for 10 years, a sunset law, that outlawed the availability of assault weapons, and that worked. It reduced the number of deaths by assault weapons by 70%. And then when it ended, after the 10-year sunset, they couldn't get it renewed. It's outrageous, and it's because of the power and the influence and the money dedicated the NRA, which is so focused that all their money goes to this one issue. So every congressman, every senator knows that if you try to pass something that's called gun control, even though 70% or more of the American people, I think maybe closer to 80% want it, they can't get it passed. It's sinful. And the other side of the coin is, even in international, we're a great country. We're supposedly the nicest, the most well-meaning country in the world, and we're involved in more wars than any, and more distribution of mass destruction of military equipment than any other country. We all by ourselves, the United States, spends as much as almost all the rest of the countries in the world combined on defense spending. And it's, when I was a kid, it was called, you may remember this too, you're getting up there. When you were a kid, maybe it was called the same thing. During the Second World War, the Defense Department was called the War Department. After the Second World War, they figured that wasn't a great name for, so they changed it to the Defense Department. You'd think that if we had a Defense Department, we'd have a defense budget and an offense budget. We don't have an offense budget. It all comes under defense, and thus nobody could ever, in Congress, vote against it, because how could you vote against defense? And every state and every city, a community in the United States benefits from contractors and manufacturers that get defense contracts and jobs and so forth. And at the time, I didn't think Eisenhower was such a great president, because hardly anything happened during his 8 years of service. But in retrospect, I have such enormous respect for a man who was probably the greatest general in the history of our country, won the Second World War for the United States and the Allies. And then at the end of his administration, his 8 years, where every other president gets up and announces what a great job he did and how things are better than they ever were before, he took the time to warn us against the military-industrial complex and the power it had. And we have to recognize that, because if you think about it, no other country since the Second World War has been in as many wars, fruitless wars, as the United States. Right after the Second World War, the next one was the Korean War. I'm not even talking about small wars like interactions we had with Iran and other smaller countries. But we had the Korean War, then we had the Vietnam War, then we had the Iraq War, then we had the Afghan War. We gave our most precious jewels, our young people, our young men and women, many of whom are in veterans' hospitals till this day. Only recently, the last of the veterans of the Second World War that was crippled and maimed and blinded and so forth passed away. So it doesn't end with the war. The consequences of the Afghanistan war, where we spent trillions, will live with us for the next 50 years and more. by all the young people that we've lost. And there's no reason that in all the years of civilization, of progress that civilization presumably made, why we can't totally outlaw wars, just as we've outlawed what do they call mines that you place during the war and leave them till after the war, and people are constantly stepping on them and getting killed. And biological war we outlawed, maybe not perfectly, but overwhelmingly successfully. And what's the other kind of wars?
Proxy wars?
No, poison, biological poison, all of which have been outlawed.
Germ warfare.
Germ warfare, and we should mobilize a force of all the advanced countries in the world and all the countries of the world to set up an army that if anybody starts a war, that we go after them. There's no reason to have wars. We have a draft. We send our young people, our most valuable young people, to fight other young people that they don't hate. They don't even know them. They might be best friends if they know each other. To kill them as fast as they can. It's primitive. It's barbarian. We should be past that stage. We're not perfect as human beings, but we let's have Vinny respond to that, or Paul Copperell, whoever.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you're on the right track, Mort.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm going to say may sound ridiculous, because I'm going to go back to basics. And I say that this country, the United States, is based on courage. People who, like you, Mort, have taken enormous risk, worked hard, and made a lot out of whatever opportunity you saw. So we're based, in my opinion, on the courage of the individual who is willing to risk in return for opportunity. I also think that we need to recognize that we humans are really mammals, and we're subject to all the inability to keep on, that we develop over the course of our lives, to keep on producing and taking care of ourselves and our young ones, our children. I think we need to remember in every kind of discussion like this that life is finite. And you may run across people who live to be 120 years old and they look as if they're going to go on forever, but they won't. And we have, as a country, in my opinion, the obligation, A, to take care of people who seize opportunity, who have the courage to take risk and live according to the requirements of doing that, of taking risk and producing and hopefully receiving the benefit of the opportunity. Then there are a lot of us, and it's particularly true as we age, that really can't take care of ourselves. And there are a lot of people who are in this country who don't have the opportunity for education, for a solid education that will enable them to do well, however defined. And then there is healthcare, and there are more people who are damaging themselves or have inherited various diseases, or they come here from other countries and they are either too old, they're unfortunately indigent and just unable to take good care of themselves. And I think the government has a huge responsibility to take care of people who don't have the courage, can't seize the opportunity, aren't able to produce, or maybe once did produce, but unfortunately no longer can. People, I mean, Mort, you're 93 years old, and you probably can't go out there and sell vacuum cleaners anymore if you had to. And I, in another few months, will be 90 years old, and I can't work in a factory the way I did when I was young. At least I don't want to try it because I don't think I'd succeed. I think those comments set a parameter for what a government ought to do. And what I think we all recognize is that, and I'm exaggerating here, virtually every foreign country, every foreigner, every person who lives in that country hates the United States. And absolutely every one of them would love to live here. And the reason for that is that this is still a land of personal freedom of expression. We have the right to vote to the extent that that is recognized and honest, and we can say what we want, and we can pretty much do what we want. So I think,
Paul,
frankly, the problem is, let me just finish one last thing, and then I'll be very quiet.
please.
I think that the problem is that people get to a point of protecting their wealth or property, and it's particularly older people because we've accumulated more of it, and it is the haves protecting their wealth to the detriment of the have-nots. And I feel that we should have not 100% estate and inheritance taxes, but very close to it, so that our children have to go out and work, and they have to go and forge the best they can. And if they can't take care of themselves, then there ought to be a mechanism which presumably is government or charity funded, that enables people to be taken care of who can't take care of themselves. And I think this requires education. I think it requires an ability of the people to accept the fact that we're all human and we all die because life is finite. And we should just try to educate people to be more concerned about as you say, more concerned about their fellow human beings, about mankind. So
Paul,
that's where I come out.
Paul, please don't keep reminding me that life is finite, because one of the things, Rosie, my wife, who was very special, unusually great woman, years ago, early on, she had better judgment than I did. She was smarter than I was, even economically, because at that time she said, why don't we buy some cemetery plots so if something happens to us or our loved ones, we'll have a place to put them in. And I never would do that. I told her I'm not buying cemetery plots. And at that time, I remember I was offered 2 great plots, or 4, I don't remember how many, for $2,000. Today, the same lots are $50,000 or more, and I still don't have any place. And every time my wife said, we got it, what happens to us? I said, as far as I'm concerned, if something happens to me, you can call the local sanitation, whatever, and contribute my body. And she always said, who said they'd be interested in taking it? But the point was that I never bought a plot so I'm staying alive, because whatever I buy, I like to use right away. And if I had bought it, I'd be dead a long time ago. So if I don't buy a plot, I may live 200-300 years ago. So don't keep announcing how finite our existence is. And the other point about us being mammals and so forth, I'm afraid of snakes and lions and tigers and crocodiles and every kind of animal, not one of which has ever hurt me. It's only human beings that hurt each other and kill each other and So don't get me wrong. I think the United States because I started criticizing the United States. That doesn't mean I don't love it the most and don't think it's the greatest country in the world in the history of mankind. But the reason I'm going at it the way I am is I'm saying, despite that, we could do a lot better, and our forefathers instructed us in the Bill of Rights, I believe. They said when at the end, we should work to make it a more perfect union. They didn't say it's perfect or the Constitution makes it perfect. They said work to make it a more perfect union, and specifically they said provide for our people life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Instead, we've gone from we're great because we're capitalistic, and that's a brilliant thing that Adam Smith discovered and invented and articulated, because it motivates people in their own selfish interest to do good for the government, for all the people. You work, you create something, and then you sell it to somebody or provide it to somebody that's willing to pay for it because you do a good job producing it at a lower price that they can or beyond their ability to produce. So it's a wonderful, wonderful system, but it's evolved in our society through greed, through the seeking for power. You mentioned before the government, the wealthy people control the laws that get passed. We don't even live in a democracy. 80% of the people want gun control, but there's no way we can get that passed because the people that make the contributions, the donations to our elected officials are the ones that call the shots. If you give I know that because I've had the situation in my own case where if I gave a congressman or a senator $250,000, they asked me what they should do about a law. Should they pass it? Should they initiate it?
Yeah,
should they?
sure.
And so it's not a democracy that adheres to the wishes of the majority of the people. So I'm saying, while I say it's the most perfect, and also we shouldn't be in all these wars. Monroe Doctrine said, stay out of the foreign wars. Don't go overseas. Take care of North America and South America. That's enough. But we became the policemen of the world. What the hell were we doing in Afghanistan? Yes, with 3,000 people were killed on 9/11. 3,000 people, and that's a lot. But we lost, as a count of that, hundreds of thousands of civilians and people in Afghanistan, our own people, their people, and treasure and blood, countless, which is outrageous. We should have gone after Osama bin Laden as we did, and we got him. He was the guy that created the problem. Instead of we go to war in Afghanistan and Iraq and Iran and every place you could think of. It's enough. Let's figure out how to make love, not war. So the United States is...
Yeah, well, when you appoint a guy like Donald Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, and I knew Rumsfeld, the arrogance of the military and many of our leaders is just beyond belief, but they are the guys who are calling the shots like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, that's why.
I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine the president saying to Rumsfeld, "Can you want to go and invade Afghanistan? You want to go and invade Iraq and so on?" I mean, of course, Rumsfeld is going to say, "Yes, of course I can do it. We can do it." That's
Okay.
the way they are, and it's ridiculous.
Paul,
if I can just add something. First of all, I really enjoy your other guests' comments and remarks, and to a large extent, I totally agree, except for certain possibly the ending. And the fact of knowing and enjoying this great country, I just want to relate. I had the privilege of traveling to some 140 countries, and what always amazed me is that sometimes in some of those countries they had occasion to play at a sporting event the Star Spangled Banner. I had a feeling inside of me, I almost wanted to cry from the pride that I have in this country and the greatness of this country. And as you pointed out, there are people, my parents, my heroes, my mother and father never got past the sixth grade, but they did their best to send me to school. However, they knew and the great opportunity of this country. I do disagree in one aspect, though, what you're saying. I don't think that I would support, nor would I favor having the monies or 100% estate tax. I think practically the estate tax is even too much as it is now. There are other ways of raising income, and the better thing is there are other ways for this country to spend its money better. Now, we and those who worked, and I'm sure you're successful, as Morty's been successful, and there are so many people who are successful who worked all of their lives. And for what? The family. And the family deserves that rather than the government. So when we talk about estate taxes, that's not something that I would favor going to or being increased. In fact, I think it should be diminished. There are other ways. Government wastes a great deal of money. Billions were lost on the programs because of fraud. And those who took advantage of the funds that were distributed by this government, which increased our debt and was found to be fraudulently and taken unlawfully.
Vinny, I got to ask you to pause for a minute because Mary's been waiting a long time. So, Mary, why don't you come on and let us know your views? Mary? Maybe she got tired of waiting. She's been waiting a long time. Is she still on? Is Mary?
Yeah.
Mary?
Thank you for calling the Voice of Wisdom. You may listen to the show while waiting. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on with the host.
Okay. Hello?
Mary?
Yes. I'm sorry. I've kind of lost you. What are we talking about now? Income.
Anything you like.
Okay. Are we talking about finances right now, or end of the life, or if we were at one point I thought we were talking about end of the life,
we're talking,
and I was thinking cremation is the way that my husband was cremated, and I would be cremated, our ashes mixed together and put on the side of the road up to Mount Rainier. Is that one of the topics we were talking about?
Not necessarily, but it's your show, so
Okay.
So if you want to talk about cremation,
That's a good idea.
be my guest. No, we're talking about how to improve this great world of ours. It's great, but there's room
How
for
do we
improvement.
improve our great world?
Our world, the
How we-
world we live in. What
Yes,
can we do?
If we can somehow find out how we can get along with each other.
Absolutely.
We're doing
That's
poorer and poorer
That's
job
it.
of that
Right.
each day. And I think a lot of it has to do with our political leaders, especially on the Republican side, that's just not interested in getting along or finding a way to improve each other's lives.
Yeah, we definitely are the most polarized we've ever been in our history, as far as I can appraise it.
I agree.
I wonder if I could comment on what the judge said about taxes.
Go ahead.
There's no way that an estate or an inheritance tax is going to raise enough money to do what needs to be done by the federal government and by the states. And as you say, Judge, there are a number of ways whereby taxes can be virtually painless and can raise not infinite amounts of money, but more than we need right now and probably more than we will need for the foreseeable future. Well, foreseeable, whatever, for the next 50 years. And my sense is that the lobbyists will prevent the adoption of some kind of an electronic transaction tax, which could be less than 1/1000th of a penny every time you go to the ATM or you send a wire transfer of funds or whatever, charge something on your credit card. You'd never miss it. But the bank lobby is too strong, and it's very simple. The government could employ such a tax and then give each of the banks $1 billion or $10 billion for the big ones to have them implement the system. But in any event, taxes it's just another thing. I think honestly, we if we were willing as a nation to talk about and really seriously consider how we can make our government and our civilians, our people, come together, geez, we would be so fortunate and smart to do it. And I'm going to rest on that one.
Well, you know what? First of all, I think your idea of taxing is excellent. And I agree with you. The lobbyist, that's the problem with government. When we talk about the role of government, the problem is the lobbyists are too strong. They're supporting the way we support our candidates. They're human. They're indebted to the special interests. So that excellent program that you talked about will never pass. And it's nice to talk about what we should do. Human nature, had Adam not eaten that apple, maybe we would be more caring, as we should be, for the less fortunate.
Now we'd still be running around naked. Hooray!
We wouldn't Eve yet.
Now we're getting back to the real bottom line. The perverts I have on here. Anyway, I still question the validity of why we, as the wealthiest country in the world, as the only advanced country that doesn't have universal health care, that should be basic. Why we have poverty for children, that should be basic. If there's some pain in paying taxes, then so be it. But to give tax cuts to the wealthiest when they're loaded up to the gazoo, as Trump did a couple of years ago, $2 trillion tax cut most of it went to the top 2%. Is outrageous.
Yeah, sure.
Well, aren't we wealthy enough to take care of the most needy? They're always saying there's fraud, there's this. Yes, there is. There's more fraud against with big business than there is with these little people, how much they successfully rob. But we should be caring enough to take care of the neediest. Every religion preaches that. And we should have a heart that says, I don't want to see anybody in my community, in my group, in my country, in my world, going around hungry and without health care. It's just not right. Not if we have the resources. If we don't have the resources, fine. But to give tax cuts to the wealthy and to let them, the big corporations, pay zero tax and warehouse their funds overseas till they get a discounted rate to bring the money back to this country at a much lower tax rate, that's sinful. That's what we're. So why can't we move up from number 13 to at least number 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 and hopefully 1 in terms of happiness that we as a country experience in this world?
Morty, to answer that question is to say why is human nature what it is.
No, but we can.
Well, isn't it,
But we can. We can.
Isn't it also that,
There's
that
no-
we,
there's
that we
no-
seem to measure one's
there's-
worth by how much money he has?
There's no excuse. There's no excuse. We've turned from life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to life, liberty, and ever-growing gross domestic product and profitability, profits, greed. It's outrageous. We have one other caller. We have one other caller. They love you, the judge and the genius from Harvard Business School. So I want to give her the benefit of your wisdom. What's your name? Hello?
Hi, my name is Leah.
Leah.
I wanted to say thank you very much for taking my call. It's a pleasure to be part of your program. And I have actually two questions for both of you. First question, to what extent do you feel the government should control the COVID vaccine mandate in the pediatric population? And secondly, what practical as well as effective advice would you have for a parent body population within a community to either support or refuse such a mandate?
Go ahead. The answer, first of all, I think that the government is necessary to provide the funding, and should. We could never have distributed the vaccines as it has been, the millions, multiple millions, that were necessary to protect as best as it could. So in that regard, I feel that the government should continue that role. And that's one of the role of government is this subject to this discussion. The role of government in healthcare is very important, as pointed out by Morty.
Okay. I totally see it eye to eye with you. I completely agree with you. And as far as, what about controlling the vaccine mandates? For example, come September, we parents around New York area might be facing an actual mandate. For a child to attend school, the government might be requiring a COVID vaccine. So to what extent do you feel the government should control such mandates? Or where do you draw the line, basically?
If the health scientists, if the geniuses that we address to give us the answers insist that that's one way to control it and limit it, we can't do as so many people say, it's my right, it's my body, we should have the right to do anything we want. Not when you're exposing yourself to others that you may kill in the process. Look, we draft soldiers into the military. They don't want to go, but we do it because it's necessary to defend the total of our country. So there's some cases where we can't say, that you have total freedom. Freedom comes with some limitations. Even the free sports demonstrates that better than anything. You don't want to have any limitations in sports, but you still have to have an umpire or a referee to supervise. So to eliminate all regulations, as some would advise, is ridiculous. And there are times when you have to give up your individual rights for the benefit of the total of society. That's my view.
Okay.
And you're right, Mort.
Every once in a while, I'm like a busted clock. I'm right. Twice a day. Twice a day. Okay, we're coming.
Twice a day, that's pretty good, Mort.
I'm bragging. I'm really not. I should have said twice one day. One day in my life, I got it twice. Anyway, thank you, Paul. Thank you, the Honorable Judge Vincent Pirrone. You guys were great. You made an exciting program, and you gave me plenty of aggravation, so that proves how good a program it was. God bless you. God bless all my listeners. Have a great week. Tell your friends about it, and join the debate. Be well. God bless you.
Mort, may I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
Before you hang up, and that is, as you know, I'm helping Roy file with the HBS alumni bulletin that comes out 4 times a year. And I would very much like to indicate to our classmates in the issue that will be published in March of 2023 that it's very stimulating to join in with your discussion group on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 and urge some of our classmates to join in and speak their mind about whatever the topic is. Now, would that lead to just too many people and too many?
No, that's a fabulous idea because, there's a lot worse than having people accepted to Harvard Business School, which is very difficult to get into in the first place, being callers and giving their insights and advice. So I would love that, and we'd even broaden the podcast to twice a week or 3 times a week or 24/7, because what I want to do is spread good ideas and wisdom for the benefit of all our fellow citizens and for all humanity. So by all means.
Kellen, may I just add something?
Go ahead, Vinny, go ahead.
I consider it a privilege, and I mean that sincerely, to have been in the company of both you guys. I mean, I feel like a kid at 84, but you have enlightened me to a large degree, and I am, again, grateful for the opportunity to have been on this program with you and to discuss these issues with your readers and followers. Take care.
Vinny,
Stay well.
Vinny, it's in return.
Well, that's really nice of you. Thank you.
Vinny, it's in return for all the aggravation you've given me over the years. I love you both and have a great. I'll tell you, before I leave you, I want to tell you, some cop is riding along and all of a sudden there's a siren. Ah! That was a siren. Ah! The siren, the guy stops the guy and says, "Do you realize your wife fell out of the car 10 miles back?" And the guy says, "Oh, thank God. I thought I was going deaf."
That's Morty.
Vinny, did you get that? Have a great week.
We need more jokes.
I love you. Yeah, we'll start next week.
You guys are terrific.
Okay. God bless you all.
Judge